Tonight, the race for a vaccine.
Tens of millions of doses of approved vaccine for use later this year.
As coronavirus deaths in the U.S. hit nearly 1,000 a day, with 77,000 cases reported on Thursday alone. Still, health officials cautiously optimistic.
We should know as we get into the mid to late fall.
This as Russia and China target American companies to steal valuable vaccine research.
Other countries are actively targeting the health research industry.
Plus,
it doesn't necessarily bode well.
The warnings from a major global terrorism database. All this and more tonight on Faith Nation. Sounding the alarm after shattering new coronavirus records. Welcome to Faith Nation. I'm John Jessup. Well, tonight we're only a little over halfway through July, and already it's proving to be the worst month for new cases of COVID-19. One bright spot, the death rate is nowhere near the record-breaking pace from a few months back. With me now, CBN White House correspondent Ben Kennedy. Ben, where are we seeing the greatest concentration of new cases?
Well, John, first, Thursday's caseload topped 70,000. And to answer your first question, Arizona, Florida, and Texas account for nearly half of those 70,000 new cases. This as the world races for a vaccine.
We believe it is very credible to be thinking of the high tens of millions of doses of approved vaccine for use later this year.
More than 100 different vaccines are being tested around the world. Trials from Oxford and Moderna even entering phase 3 testing. Dr. Anthony Fauci is cautiously optimistic the U.S. will see a vaccine this fall, but told Facebook CEO Mark Zuckerberg, despite seeing a treatment on the horizon, the virus must be taken seriously.
You're getting infected is not just you in a vacuum. You're propagating a pandemic. So when I see the pictures of people at bars, you know, they think they're not doing anything that is particularly harmful, but they might be.
More than 70,000 new U.S. cases were reported Thursday. This says upwards of 800,000 tests are happening each day.
Results are taking anywhere up to 8 days. So we do tell patients right away that they have to self-quarantine. So really, even before we get the results.
Nearly 1,000 people are dying each day from COVID-19 as officials push.
We need to practice social distancing. We need to wear face coverings, especially if we're in any type of a hot zone.
Now, scientists are looking at clinical trial data to see who would benefit most from a vaccine, which one is considered safe and effective. It is also not clear if the vaccine will need to be taken annually. John?
All right, thank you, Ben. To health news from the High Court. After being released from the hospital earlier this week, Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg revealed today she's being treated for recurrence of cancer. The 87-year-old is receiving chemotherapy for liver cancer, the treatment successfully reducing lesions on her liver. Ginsburg receiving chemo every 2 weeks. That hospitalization earlier in the week was for a possible infection and unrelated to cancer. Today, in a statement issued by the court, Ginsburg said she would remain a member of the court as long as she could do the job full steam, adding that she remains fully able. Well, school districts nationwide are weighing the safest way to teach classes this fall. With the recent spike in COVID cases, some teachers are torn. CBN's Charlene Aaron explains why.
As the pandemic continues to surprise medical experts, the debate grows on how the country's schools can safely reopen. Top federal health and education officials, however, support President Trump's call that students must return to the classroom for in-person learning. This issue has become central for the president as he's pressuring governors to make it happen in the fall. In Florida, some school districts want students in class as early as August, despite a surge in state cases.
Ultimately, it's not a matter of if schools should reopen, it's simply a matter of how. They must fully open and they must be fully operational. And how that happens is best left to education and community leaders.
Last month, the CDC issued guidance on reopening classes.
We're prepared to work with each school, each jurisdiction, to help them use the different strategies that we've proposed that help do this safely so they come up with the optimal strategy for those schools.
Recommendations include masks for students and teachers, staggered schedules, wider distance between desks, and eating meals in classrooms instead of the cafeteria. Rules that Nicole Aaron, a special education teacher in D.C., says would be difficult to follow.
My kids, because of their disabilities, they're not going to be able to wear a mask all day. They have sensory needs and different things and challenges that will not allow them to be able to keep a mask on. If they can't wear a mask, then what are we really exposing ourselves to? Even if we have on a mask, at some point, wearing a mask all day for 8 hours, it's a hard thing to do.
A recent USA Today Ipsos poll shows 1 in 5 teachers are unlikely to return if their schools reopen, many citing fear over putting themselves and their families at risk. It's a concern shared by Nicole Aaron.
As a parent and as a teacher, is if I go back to school, then my kids have to go somewhere. If their schools aren't open, then I have to send them to childcare and I'm putting them in danger. If I go back to school, then I could bring COVID into my home. So either way, I'm exposing my family to COVID, regardless of if I'm going out to work or if I'm having to take them to childcare.
Meanwhile, plans for reopenings are likely to vary from district to district as the virus looks different in each community. Charlene Aaron, CBN News.
Thank you, Charlene. Joining me now for our Friday Faith Nation political panel, CBN News Chief Political Analyst David Brody and Julia Manchester, political reporter at The Hill. Julia, David, great to see you both. Texas today backtracked and announced schools can remain closed longer into the fall as the state battles a spike in cases. Meanwhile, the Trump administration is still pushing for kids to return to school. It is a necessity for kids educationally and developmentally. Then there's also the risk, though, especially for kids with health issues and for their teachers. Julia, it seems like there's really no plan out there that's going to make everyone happy.
There is no plan out there that's going to make everyone happy. And we've seen that this issue has been majorly politicized across the country. You have President Trump and Education Secretary Betsy DeVos threatening to cut or withhold funding for schools that decide not to open up until the fall. But then you have Joe Biden and other Democrats essentially pushing for, potentially more remote learning or more of a government oversight or government overseeing the reopen of these local schools. So it's definitely something that's dividing a lot of Americans right now. But I would say this isn't only an issue that we're seeing play out in the presidential election. We're also seeing it play out in Senate and down ballot races. This week and last week, we were seeing a number of Democratic Senate candidates targeting a number of Republican incumbent senators such as Joni Ernst, Tom Tillis, Susan Collins, trying to tie President Trump's threat to withhold funding to them. So that's definitely becoming a worry for Republicans ahead of November.
David, to the politics of masks, Georgia Governor Brian Kemp is urging people to wear them. At the same time, though, he's suing Atlanta over the city's mask mandate. The mayor there calling the lawsuit bizarre and adding that we'll see him in court. David, notwithstanding the public health concerns, does this encroach on the philosophy of limited government?
Right. I mean, I think this is what it's all about, John. There is the mask issue. Okay, kind of a big deal. But you know what's a bigger deal? The Constitution and freedom. And this idea that you're talking about, the overreach of government, if you will, that's the way conservatives will put it. And I think that's where this has been really problematic from the very beginning. So it's kind of interesting. You have Brian Kemp down in Georgia, a pro-life governor who, guess what? When it comes to masks, he's pro-choice. As a matter of fact, there are a lot of conservatives that are pro-choice when it comes to masks. Now, I don't mean masks as it relates to being in a crowd or going to Walmart. Everybody thinks, you go into a grocery store, you should wear a mask because you're around other people. But when you're walking in a park by yourself with only the squirrels around, do you really need a mask? Or are the police going to come and fine you $250 or haul you off to jail? The police already have enough problems. So the point simply is that how much is too much? And I think that's the arena that we're in right now.
David, I want to stick with you for a moment. Today we learned Ruth Bader Ginsburg has been undergoing treatment for a recurrence of liver cancer. We all, of course, wish her well and praying for her recovery. But how much does this put the spotlight back on the high court as a campaign issue? Mind you, many evangelicals listed it as the single most important issue back in 2016.
Yeah, this is politically, now this is not good news for Ruth Bader Ginsburg, but, politically speaking, look, anytime that Donald Trump can talk about judges, And the Ruth Bader Ginsburg issue brings it front and center here. That's a good day for this president because you're right. Evangelicals went for him in 2016, very much so as a Tier A issue with judges, and he's done so much on that. So this is a chance for him to capitalize on that. And Joe Biden hasn't really given us a list of who he's going to put on the Supreme Court like that Donald Trump did in 2016. So, I think that's going to be clearly an issue for Biden, and I think Trump will be able to make some political hay out of this.
We are unfortunately out of time, and that's what happens when we have such a great panel. Julia, David, thank you so much for being with us, and have a great weekend.
You too.
When we come back, hackers joining the race for a cure against the global pandemic, how it's harming the medical effort.
Come home to the sounds of Southern Gospel from CBN Radio. You'll enjoy a rich Southern blend of bluegrass, classic gospel, and Southern gospel favorites like the Gaithers, the Crab Family, and bluegrass sounds like Mountain Faith. So make yourself at home with the all-new CBN Southern Gospel, now available at cbnradio.com.
Meet the pastors who are preaching the gospel in a fresh, fearless way. I'm Roberto Torres-Cedillo. Join me each week for Next Gen Voices. And watch God transform a generation.
Prophecy thousands of years old.
We were called to be a light to the world.
Being fulfilled today. Discover how. Get to life. Call 1-800-700-7000.
We consider it our duty to reach out and help others around the world.
For a gift of $10 or more, you can own the acclaimed CBN documentary To Life. Just call 1-800-700-7000 or log on to cbn.com.
To treat a human, no matter what he is, which religious he has, which color he is. This is what I'm doing.
See how the people of Israel are fulfilling prophecy.
History is being written, and I want to be a part of it.
By sharing their knowledge.
In Africa, in Asia, in South America, in East Europe.
And their love.
This is how we work. This is us.
Get to life. Call 1-800-700-7000 or log on to cbn.com.
Welcome back. As researchers race to develop a vaccine for the coronavirus, they're finding they need to build a better defensive firewall to protect the valuable information from being stolen. CBN's George Thomas explains.
In a joint communication, those governments allege that a hacking group known as Cozy Bear is attacking academic and pharmaceutical companies involved in developing a coronavirus vaccine.
Britain's Foreign Secretary calling Russia's alleged activities egregious and unacceptable.
I think that's pretty appalling. To have the Russian government engaged in that endeavor, I think needs calling out.
According to a 16-page document released by Britain's National Cybersecurity Center, the Russians are targeting several global organizations with hacking programs called WellMess and WellMail.
One of the things that the report stated was that a lot of this information came from phishing attacks. That is, sending emails and getting people to send personal information that then hackers could use to get in. And so, as ever with these things, the weak link in the security isn't so much the computers, it's the people.
The hacking group Cozy Bear is familiar to U.S. intelligence. Washington identified them as one of two Russian government-linked groups that broke into the DNC's computer network, stealing emails and other documents ahead of the 2016 presidential election.
The biggest takeaway from these attacks is that other countries are actively targeting the health research industry, and we're seeing the pharmaceutical companies and others being targeted because they have the information that can be used to help alleviate this global pandemic.
In April, the U.S. Department of Homeland Security warned that various cyber criminal groups around the world, including in Russia and China, were targeting COVID-19 research.
Russia not only can derive benefit economically by speeding up their own development of a vaccine, but they can also disrupt our efforts to develop a vaccine.
On Thursday, the White House said the U.S., U.K., and Canada are working to stop Russia's nefarious actions.
We worked very closely with our allies to ensure that we would take measures to keep that information safe, and we continue to do so, and we're aware of those activities.
The report doesn't specify whether Russia's president knew about the hacking job. The Kremlin has rejected the allegations. George Thomas, CBN News.
All right, thank you, George. Tonight, new information points to a troubling trend in Afghanistan. A just-released global study indicates terrorist acts in 2019 were on the rise there in the middle of ongoing peace talks. CBN News national security correspondent Eric Phillips has more.
The Global Terrorism database is maintained by researchers at the University of Maryland. It tracks terrorist acts and trends with more than 200,000 incidents going all the way back to 1970. And while this year's update reveals a general decline in terrorism worldwide, where it's spiking is particularly concerning. According to the report, 2019 made 5 years in a row that terrorism has been on the decline. There were 8,500 attacks recorded in 2019. That's a 14% drop from the year before. A good sign overall, but a closer analysis reveals a disturbing truth.
A little over 1/5 of all of the attacks that we recorded in the database in 2019 took place in Afghanistan, which is really remarkable.
A slight increase there over the year before, with Afghanistan accounting for nearly half of those killed in terror attacks in 2019 worldwide. The Taliban was responsible for more terrorist attacks in 2019 than any other group by a wide margin.
The Taliban and the United States government were engaging in peace talks during 2019. It doesn't necessarily bode well for the ongoing success of the peace talks. There seems to be a fundamental disagreement among the parties on whether the negotiations should come first or the cessation of violence should come first. It's sort of a chicken and the egg problem.
Though terrorist attacks in the U.S. remain rare, the U.S. has seen a slight uptick, the vast majority of them non-lethal. However, this attack at an El Paso, Texas Walmart killed 23 people. Miller says it was the textbook definition of terrorism.
There was the use of violence. It was intentional and planned in advance. And it was motivated by white supremacy and, in particular, xenophobia and anti-immigrant sentiments.
The deadliest terrorist attacks in 2019 took place on Easter Sunday in Sri Lanka. More than 250 people were killed and at least 500 others injured in suicide bombings at 7 different crowded venues, including hotels and churches. One of the victims, 11-and-a-half-year-old Kiran Shafritz de Soisa. I spoke to his devastated father.
I have wonderful memories, but I have a hole where all of the future memories were going to be. His teenage years that he won't have, his adult years that he won't have, his family that he won't have, his children that he won't have, and what the world lost.
Other key points in the report: the number of terror attacks in Iraq down more than 50% last year from the year before, largely because of the decline of ISIS. But there was a sharp increase in the number of racially and ethnically motivated attacks, particularly against Hispanics in the U.S. and Muslims in New Zealand. Eric Phillips, CBN News.
An important story. Thank you so much, Eric. Coming up, it's not just schools and the economy. When Faith Nation returns, a look at how the pandemic could reshape the future of America's churches.
Too often, we carry baggage from our past. You know what it's like. It affects everything and everyone in our lives. It's always there, weighing us down and keeping us from achieving true happiness. But do you know God never meant for us to be trapped in the past? You can be free of your baggage. Learn how God's forgiveness leads to changed lives and new beginnings. Call the 700 Club.
I'm Ephraim Graham, and this is Studio 5. Cruise with me as I discover the good things happening in the world of music, sports, television, and movies.
The fact that Ryan Coogler was going to be directing the film, I knew that something special was going to happen.
We'll chat with artists at the forefront of entertainment and explore the connection between popular culture and faith.
I asked my pastor, I said, well, does that mean I'm supposed to be a preacher? He says, well, no, you already have a pulpit.
Watch Studio 5, Wednesday night at 9:30.
Tikkun Olam,
This is our nature as a country.
to make the world a better place.
Literally, we felt the earth shaking.
The Christian Broadcasting Network presents To Life, how Israeli volunteers are changing the world.
This film needs to be seen by everyone.
I was in tears.
Now you can own the inspiring documentary To Life on DVD.
There is blood on our hands if we know and we walk away.
I'm so grateful that this film was made.
To Life can be yours for a gift of $10 or more. Call 1-800-700-7000 or log on to CBN.com.
We know that every minute counts to save life.
It'll bless Israel, but it'll also bless all the friends of Israel.
Discover the untold story of how Israeli volunteers are making the world a better place. Call 1-800-700-7000 or log on to CBN.com to get your copy today.
Welcome back. Tonight, America's pastors are praying about the future of the church after the COVID crisis. Right now, about 4 in 10 churches rely on emergency government assistance to stay afloat, but that funding is about to run out. This as 2/3 of churches nationwide have experienced a drop in giving. According to the National Association of Evangelicals, 80% of churches have fewer than 200 people, and tens of thousands of those smaller churches will be forced to reduce staff, hours, and compensation over the next few months. We turn now to Brian Kluth for more on the hard choices facing America's churches. He is the national spokesman for NAE Financial Health and the Bless Your Pastor movement. Brian, thank you for being with us.
Hey, great to be with you and your viewers, and we just really want to help them understand what's happening in America and how they can be of help.
Likewise. Well, let's hop to it. With governmental financial aid set to expire, what's the prognosis for some of these cash-strapped churches?
Yeah, it's going to be challenging for churches because for many churches, they're still not even back in session. They're not meeting on site. A lot of large churches across America will not get back live until 2021. A lot of smaller churches, some people aren't comfortable. Sometimes there's older congregations. So this next several months are going to be very challenging for churches, and it's just going to be important for people to be faithful to their local church, be a faithful giver, be a faithful prayer, go online if they have online services. If you're comfortable going to an on-site service, do that. Reach out to the people around you, your loved ones in that congregation, the people you care about. So it's just a very important time for Christians to step up and really be the church, even though we can't meet in a church.
Brian, what are the chances of renewed financial assistance from the federal government, and is that something that churches even want to entertain?
I talked to congressional office just last week, and there are things being discussed for possible late July legislation, but they said there's no guarantees, and they don't know that there's going to be any more payroll assistance for churches. So there's nothing for sure on the horizon. So churches are really going to have to deal with what they have from the people that give to their church and also any reserves they may have.
We know older Americans are some of the most susceptible to COVID-19, but they're also some of the most faithful church attenders and biggest givers. How will churches contend with older Americans who may be reluctant to go back to church in person?
Yeah, I think churches in the future, they are going to have to continue to go on site and online. It's not going to be one or the other. It's going to have to be both for the foreseeable future. And a lot of churches have really ramped up their online activities. From Bible study groups to women's groups to men's groups, even youth groups, sometimes children's material, all going online. And then as churches, get back in session live, some people, like you said, are not going to be comfortable coming. But even digital giving is a lot of churches have enacted that in the last several months. So more and more churches are able to receive gifts online, and other people can mail in a check if they want to do that. But it's just going to be important to be faithful to your local congregation and also to realize your pastor is probably under more stress than he's ever been. Normally, pastors are stressed anyway. They work 50 to 70 hours a week. Many of them are not paid very well. So it's going to be more important than ever for pastors to be loved by their congregation, especially with October Pastor Appreciation Month coming up in just a few months here in October. Churches are going to need to get ready to really bless and care for their pastors.
You set me up perfectly. We only have about 30 seconds left. Can you talk about how your Pastor movement is providing assistance for people and pastors?
Yes, at the Bless Your Pastor website, we have free materials for churches you can use for the October Pastor Appreciation Month. And every church that participates, we will send your pastor a $250 gift card. We have grant money to do that. So they just need to go to blessyourpastor.org, get the free materials, distribute it, take an offering, let us know, and we'll bless your pastor with $250. Right.
Brian Clue, thank you so much for your time, and we'll be back right after this.
Thank you. God bless you.
It's the new Superbook Bible app. It's packed with games, activities, and Superbook episodes that you can watch for free. Oh, no! There's trivia, a fun daily devotional, and answers to your Bible questions. Plus, an easy-to-understand Bible the whole family will enjoy. You can even create your own Superbook character. Ta-da! It's the new Superbook Bible app. Free downloads on iTunes, Google Play, and Amazon.
From Washington, D.C., uncompromising stories, interviews, and analysis from veteran journalists David Brody.
Escalating fight.
Jenna Browder.
Chose his words carefully.
Ben Kennedy.
Plan to join him.
And Amber Strong.
Or impeachment grows a little bit louder.
Bringing you the political news that matters.
We get out and tell the story of the progress that we're making in this country.
Watch Faith Nation, weeknights at 6 on the CBN News Channel.
We will move the American embassy to the eternal capital of the Jewish people, Jerusalem.
As the nations rage, you can stand with Israel.
History is being written, and I want to be a part of it.
Call 1-800-700-7000 and get to life.
This is our nature as a country.
Discover the untold story of how Israeli volunteers are changing the world.
We consider it our duty to reach out and help others around the world.
For a gift of $10 or more, you can own the acclaimed CBN documentary To Life.
To treat a human, no matter what he is, which religious he have, which color he is, this is what I'm doing.
Support Israel in their time of need. Get to Life, now available on DVD. Call 1-800-700-7000 or log on to cbn.com.
And I wish that other people throughout the world could see this side of Israel.
And finally tonight, for fans missing out on canceled concerts, 71-year-old sensation Billy Joel banged new life into an old piano on the street for a small crowd. The piano had been kicked to the curb by a Long Island resident. Billy Joel, a New York native himself, spotted it and put on a spontaneous sidewalk show. Like many performers, Joel has postponed most of his summer concerts until next year due to COVID restrictions. He was eager to take the opportunity to entertain and give new life to the worn-out instrument, definitely not letting this opportunity go to waste. Music to your ears. Thanks so much for watching Faith Nation. We hope you have a great and safe weekend.